and let everyone know. Share with your network, with your friends, what's going on, because I think that we've got a lot of great stories, a lot of information. And I'm making a big jump today because I know I have a big following on Twitter. Thank you, Royals. Thank you, 2014 and 15 for that. And so I try to stick mostly to Royals on that, but I just kind of made the decision today that let's start streaming this. The more people that see it, I believe the better. So Facebook, YouTube, and now for any of you that might be tuning in on Twitter, I think it's out there right now, I welcome you here. Big thanks to Enterprise Bank and Trust. I know they've been really busy, as everyone is in the world of banking right now with those PPP loans, and I've really appreciated what they've been able to do for me. Enterprise Bank and Trust, hashtag no stopping you. And I've got to thank my friends at KC Cattle Company for not just keeping the Goldberg family fed. I think we've got some ground beef out there thawing right now, but they're locally owned and operated, veteran owned and operated up in Western Missouri. They deliver Wagyu beef right down here to the Kansas City area and all 50 states. So check them out. Phenomenal people. The product is amazing, and you can see them on social media too at KC Cattle Company. As for my guest today, this is actually someone that I've wanted to have on my weekly podcast for a long time, and it just kind of worked out to be here. She's extremely busy. I'm extremely busy. Our paths cross, actually, I would say less than maybe people might expect, because we're both in the sports world, and also have some similar backgrounds too, which I think is very interesting. But I'm really excited to bring on to the show Kathy Nelson, who does have a history in television. So I know, Kathy, you can appreciate that I'm now the technical director and doing all of these other things and have no idea what I'm doing with it. But more importantly, Kathy is the president and CEO of the Kansas City Sports Commission. I know that, well, shoot, I see some, I think that's just fountains over your head in terms of pictures. But I know you got, the little plaza scene. Otherwise, you got a million sports things from around Kansas City. This is a tough time for everyone in terms of the sports world. For the fan, it's not there. For those that work in that world, like you, we don't have events right now. So how are you hanging in there?
You know, every day is an interesting new day. We've pivoted a little bit to how are we going to bring our events back instead of continuing to plan. And I have my family here at home with me, and a lot of friends check in on me. So I think I'm doing okay, but some days you just don't know.
Yeah. There's so much to this. I've thought about this a lot, and I know that you have too, maybe even more so than me. I mean, to me, and I think we probably have this in common, we love sports. And you can correct me if I don't mean to speak for you, but there are very few people in our business, whether it be in front of the camera, whether it be in the planning like you are, and your planning goes well beyond just one sport. It involves the city and even the region. For those that are behind the cameras, for those that work on a game day, there are so many people that work in this. So, okay, people losing money. But then you start adding in the millions and millions and millions of people that rely on sports just for that diversion, for that entertainment. It's more than wins and losses. How much have you heard from people during this stretch about, oh my gosh, I missed this. Oh, when is this coming back? Because I hear it every single day.
Same. And at first, not so much, but I would say these last couple of weeks, it has definitely turned to I miss giving people a high five. I miss crossing a finish line at a 5K. We talked this morning, I miss celebrating victories and learning from losses right now. My gosh, you really do just miss that. You said it, diversion. You miss that camaraderie. You miss that celebration. You miss that feeling. It's hard. It's hard right now.
Yeah, I just keep thinking about the fact that people need it. I mean, I so often say that sports shouldn't be life and death, and the reason why sometimes it is because that's that escape for people, and that gives them that chance to get away from whatever is troubling them at home. It could be anything, but most of us have something that is bugging us or on our minds, whether it be finances or relationships or whatever it is, beyond just the kids driving you crazy in quarantine and all that good stuff. And so what do? We tune in to watch sports, or we go to those sporting events or the movies or arts, whatever it is. And so that's obviously grounded right now.
Yeah.
What are you working on right now?
Oh, well, so we're an event company and we have events. We have an event in May that we've moved to August. We have a triathlon. We have our awards banquet coming up in June. So we're working on how do we manage that? How do we celebrate sports? We still have a Super Bowl team to celebrate. How do we continue to do that? So right now we're really working on, do we push our events back? If so, what does that look like? Do we host them virtually? What does that feel like? And then one that's near and dear to my heart is Camp Win for us. We have 1,000 girls ages 6 through 12 where they learn 16 different sports. And we know we leave an impact with them. How are we going to do that? And more than likely, we're not going to be able to. So it's just that crushing feeling right now of not only are we trying to figure out how to survive financially, but how do we continue to give back as an organization to our city through sport is what every day we struggle with right now.
We have a mutual friend that has already chimed in on Facebook, Katie Dunn Fitzgerald. I miss sports right now too. Yes, Katie, you are thinking right alongside of just about everyone. So let's talk about that. We were actually on a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago, and I was doing a little thing that Katie helped me organize, and you were on that. And we were doing some Q&A afterwards. I'll say, like, in the hour that we were together, it was comments you made that just kind of blew me away, because I think that in the midst of all of this, we kind of think about our worlds, and then hopefully we start thinking about other people's worlds and trying to help out and doing all of that. And I hadn't really put myself in your shoes in terms of what it must have been like with the Big 12 tournament. I'll say this, and I think I put it out on social media promo a little while ago. We all, if we're a sports fan, we all remember something right around that day. Like for me, it was the Rudy Gobert thing. And I'm not a huge NBA fan, but I just remember my son saying, oh my gosh, the NBA just postponed its season and somebody has the coronavirus. And it was still kind of novel at that point too.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was that trickle down. And I remember the next day we were getting ready to head out of town on vacation. We were driving to Florida. And we stopped for a sandwich, and I heard somebody that the news was up on in the sandwich shop, and this guy says, I don't know why they're getting rid of all this stuff. This is ridiculous. It's all a media fabrication and blah, blah, blah. And I might have said a couple things because I don't like that. I am in the media. I mean, it's a different role than many. And I think back how different things are today than they were 5 or whatever weeks ago. So take us through that decision, the challenge and what you all had to weigh, because it had to have been just an incredibly difficult moment for you.
Yeah, so Big 12 men's and women's basketball was in Kansas City that week. We had brought the women back. We've been bidding on that, bringing them back. So we were so excited to have both championships back in the same city. The buzz was unbelievable. We were working in 2 different venues, Sprint Center, Municipal. And a little backstory, I don't even think I've shared this with you yet. So the conference staff is in town the week before. We're in meetings, we're in the venues, meeting with dozens of people through parking and all the security people for Kansas City. And Sunday, the Sunday leading into championship week, I started to not feel very good. So Sunday night, I told my husband, my gosh, something's not quite right. I very rarely get sick. I woke up Monday morning with a fever of 101 and thought, I tell our staff all the time, stay home if you're sick. Well, now it's Big 12 week. I can't stay home. What am I going to do? But I knew that I couldn't go to the office and I couldn't go down to the venues. So I called the commissioner of the Big 12, Bob, who's on his way to Kansas City. We're supposed to have a meeting that afternoon. I said, hey, I'm going to stay home today, just going to see what's happening. So we were on the phone every other hour trying to figure things out with me not in the building. And finally he says, do you think you might have the virus? And I'm like, I don't think so, but I just returned from Seattle. And he goes, we're going to need you to get checked, because if you have the virus, we're going to have to shut this down immediately. And I said, well, Bob, oh my gosh, if I test positive, I'm going to make national news that I'm patient 0, if you will, in Kansas City, that now has been around the staff, has been in the venues, has been, all around everywhere where I could have infected thousands of people. And I said, oh my gosh, this is going to be incredible. And it was such a heavy feeling at that time on Monday night. So ended up going to the emergency room because now my fever was at 103 and really miserable. Again, on the phone with them, and get there. They tested negative for pneumonia. And then they said, we're going to do a flu test. If it comes back negative, we're going to assume you have the virus. So about 45 minutes later, the test came back. It was positive, and applause broke out in the emergency room. And I thought, how crazy is that? We're applauding me that I have influenza A. This is nuts.
Congratulations. Kathy
Thank
has
you.
the flu.
Yes. So
Wow.
absolutely miserable back home. So Tuesday, I was on the phone almost every other hour with staff as we started to really get serious about, well, if we got that scared with me, how do we know who has it? And like you said, I was back up on my feet on Wednesday, back in the venue on Thursday, and it was very hard to sit across from them and, to make that decision that we're not going to play basketball. Not only are we not going to play with fans, but we're not going to play. And to see those college basketball players, because the men had played Wednesday night. I was at Sprint Center Thursday morning. We make the decision, and to see those young men, I laugh. They're all a couple feet taller than I am, but they're hanging their heads, and to see them come out of the locker room to go get back on their buses was just devastating. But then and I shared with you that feeling of the economic impact and the livelihood of so many people, knowing that decision we had made, the fallout from it. It just felt very heavy and very much, I hope we've done the right thing.
I've thought so much about this, and not even just in terms of what you faced, but even personally, is what I've come to find is do what's best for others.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean don't worry about yourself. I just mean that right now everyone needs what's best for them. That's hard to do when you have, I believe what you said, $20 million worth of economic impact within a certain radius right downtown.
Yep.
That's, as you mentioned, a lot of people's lives on the line. How did you weigh that? Because in the moment, that's a huge loss.
Yeah.
Hindsight, it was the right decision.
Yeah. I guess all along I knew that our board of directors, as a nonprofit, that they would support the decision. So I wasn't worried about losing my job. I was worried about other people, losing theirs, when that's the biggest week of the year for so many people financially. And I kept going back and forth with, what's going to happen to the servers at Johnny's Tavern or the hoteliers, and how are we going to ever make this up for 1 year? How are we going to make this up? But then it came down to the decision, if one person was sick, it didn't matter. That's where we had to really focus our attention on. And my daughter, who's a junior in college, was a volunteer for the championship. If she were to get sick, if any of those coaches, any of those fans, I could never go to sleep at night. So then the money thing didn't even become a question. And the commissioner was great. We knew how much money they were going to lose out by canceling. And then the ripple effect, from now, how do they make that up for their year? Didn't even, after we got beyond the do the right thing, never talked about money again.
So is that it? I mean, ultimately, does a heavy, big decision like that, or any others for that matter, and I'm talking general terms in leadership, is it a matter of doing what's right?
Always. Yeah. I guess you pray that the thing is going to work out. And that feeling felt so heavy that day of, we're going to cancel the Big 12, which is our Super Bowl of economics every year through sports in our city. That, now looking back, what a small decision that was. And I've heard this before. Our pastor at church says this often: the worst thing is never the last thing. I had to tell myself that week, the worst thing, as bad as this feels, this is not the last thing, and it's going to become very small. It was hard to think of it that way at the time. But I think any leadership decision is so focused on that, knowing that whatever's going to happen, making that right decision, knowing that we're going to come out of it, is so critical.
Well, and here we are now. I'm trying to count this in my head. Is it 6-7 weeks now? I think it is. I mean, it was the Thursday before St. Patrick's Day, 16th, right around March 12th, I think, March 12th or 13th. And I can think about it because I know I was supposed to be in Arizona on March 17th to do some Royals baseball, leave vacation in Florida, go there, and then come back. That obviously never happened. And that seems like such a minor thing at this point, too. In hindsight, when you start seeing the numbers and the amount of people affected by this virus, have you thought about the impact that you all had on this community with that decision?
I didn't until you mentioned that last week, or last time we were
Whenever
together.
it was.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought of it that way because, again, it just felt like such a big decision at the time. And now looking at it, it feels like such a small decision that, of course, we look back and go, well, that was the right thing to do. Can you imagine if we hadn't? And then kind of moved on. I stay in touch. I often communicate with the commissioner of the conference and, of course, staff members and coaches and athletic directors. And now we're focused on what do we do this fall. But I do think now, for 5 days, we would have had 18,000 people packed into an arena at Sprint Center. Yeah, I can't even imagine again.
And then they go back to wherever it is, Lee's Summit, Overland Park, Liberty, Ames, Iowa, back to Austin, Texas, Manhattan, on and on. I could list all the places in the Big 12. The crowds that come here. All you have to do is go down to the Power and Light on any. I feel like I usually miss it, by the way, because I'm generally back at spring training at that point. All anyone ever says to me is, whatever, you got to be there for the Big 12. It's the greatest week of the season, or greatest week of the year in Kansas City. I made this comment to you on the Zoom call, and it dawned on me like that, because as you were telling me about the economic impact, but then having made the right choice, I started thinking about whatever those numbers would be of people. And you remember I said to you, this could have been our Mardi Gras. This could have been that moment. And suddenly Kansas City is on the map in a much greater way than Kathy Nelson was coronavirus zero in Kansas City. I mean, it would have been potentially catastrophic. So I guess I just wonder, I find that, I'm pretty sure it's the same for you, that I find so much joy in bringing sports to people. I find so much, and for you, with the parades and all the different events that come through and the people that get to experience our city, you have a hand in that every day. Now you've had a hand in protecting people, which I don't think is something you ever really signed up for or expected, right?
Well, yes and no. In 2014, when we were planning the World Series parade, safety was our number one concern. 2015, we were very blessed and fortunate to have an incredible police department, sheriff's department, everybody that works with us. So I think that safety is always top of mind and concern, but definitely not health. There's a difference between being safe and out in public, and then are you healthy? So no, I never would have thought that that's an outcome I would have to think about or make that decision about.
It's part of the job. Obviously, by the way, I'm drinking my coffee, and I told you beforehand that this is a way for me to stay out of trouble with, it's my alma mater, and it's great to have an alma mater which doesn't upset people here, because the only thing that'll separate people here in this community, well, one is politics, that's true anywhere, and two is basically what school did you go to, especially if it's KU, K-State, or even still Mizzou. So
you're safe.
I could do that, and I'm safe. It's good. There was one time, by the way, where I was at spring training. I don't remember the year, probably 2011, or I don't know. It was Frank Martin era, and Wisconsin was playing K-State in Tucson. So I drove down, and I might have snuck down to the media section. I got a ticket. I bought a ticket, and I might have snuck down to the media section in like the first row of the crowd. I was sitting right in front, right in front of Bo Ryan, the Wisconsin coach's wife. By the way, she doesn't hold back either, but the only one louder than her was Frank. And I swear, every time Frank Martin was looking over towards where I was at, he had to have been staring eyes right at me, glaring at me, because he knew me from baseball, and because he's a huge baseball fan. And I know he wasn't looking at me, but it felt like he was going to kill me because I was wearing my Wisconsin stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's the only time that I felt like I was ever in trouble. That's the beauty of sports, though, the way it brings everyone together. You were talking about some of what you were working on. I'll pop this one up there because another friend that we're missing Camp Win, such an amazing community camp. Let's talk a little bit more about that one, and how are you pivoting, and what are you doing for events like that and so many of the others?
Yeah. Well, we're working on camp. Bev, don't give up yet. We're trying to figure it out. It could be that it's delayed a couple months. It could be that we pivot later this fall to weekends. I just think everything as we know it, including baseball games, will never, for this year at least, be the same as what we're accustomed to. So we're trying to figure that out and taking all the safety precautions into play. Being a smaller nonprofit, of course, some of those precautions are so costly, it prevents us from moving forward on some of the events. We're focused on our awards banquet and how we still celebrate great things like Erica Mattingly, the UMKC women's basketball player who helped them, break a record and win the WAC championship. And then we're moving into our endurance events time for marathon, other triathlons, trying to figure out how we keep those going. And we've actually started the Kansas City Esports Coalition under our umbrella. So something we've been working on for about a year, and timing just happened to work out, as strange as it is, that we have a little bit extra time to now focus on that. So we're preparing for our first esports charity event to raise money for the COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund here in Kansas City. So look for that announcement in a couple weeks, and we'll be showcasing our great e-athletes that are professionals here in Kansas City. So we're busy. It seems like we're actually busier and still, again, focused on making our community better through sports. And it's just going to look different right now.
I think that's the healthiest way to go about this. And I'm curious your take on it too, because I can relate in the sense that, we should be, I don't even know where we were supposed to be today, but we should be a month into the season.
Mm-hmm.
That I work in terms of baseball. I work 6 months a year, and then I've got my speaking and all the other stuff. And so this is the first time since we moved here in 2008. I'm guessing this is the first time that I've been home on a regular basis in April since probably 2004. And then I started traveling when I worked in St. Louis in 2005 with Cardinals and Blues and all that type of stuff. So it's strange being home, and yet I find myself busier than I've ever been before, and it feels good. I don't know if it's changed the purpose, but it's changed the focus. And I find that the focus just needs to be on how can you help others? What can you do to lend either your expertise or whatever it is, your skills to others? So how much is that the mindset right now with the Kansas City Sports Commission? I mean, you've already talked about pivoting to things that maybe you never envisioned you'd be doing at this level. So
Right.
How important is that, and how gratifying is it?
Oh my gosh, it gives me goosebumps some days when on a national level we are called upon daily. I sit on now 2 national calls every week to help others think through, how do they survive? How do you keep staff? What can you cut resource wise? What expenses could just go away for the next 6 months? So that gives me great pride in that other people lean towards the Kansas City Sports Commission and to myself as to, well, what advice do I have? I help our national association. How are we going to get through this? And then I lean in locally. The mayor of Kansas City, Mayor Lucas, asked me to serve on a committee we've named at Casey Hearts. And we now every week are engaging our city through opportunities. So we did our first event this past week. We have like Casey Hearts music, Casey Hearts food. And of course, being a sports fan, I wanted to do Casey Hearts sports. And with the NFL draft, was able to pivot that idea and turn it to Casey Hearts tailgating. So you may have seen we got a lot of national recognition for idea of having everyone tailgate last Thursday at 6 p.m. just to celebrate sports are coming back sooner or later, celebrate football, celebrate our champions. And so the NFL loved it, the Chiefs loved it, and got even picked up on John Krasinski's show too yesterday. So that's been cool to really see that it's not making us any money, and that's okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to, I'll be a little scarred at the end. And that's okay. You're just like an athlete. You get back up and champions adjust, and that's what we're all doing.
It's a great way to put it. So what do you think sports look like, say, a year from now?
Oh my gosh, I wish I had that crystal
Me too.
ball. So one thing that we've started to consider is creating a committee that's a large event sports committee. So Chiefs, Royal Sporting KC, Sprint Center, Convention Center, because I don't know that any of us can actually, I don't know that we can tell you what that's going to feel or look like. I think that if we all got around the table together and, or maybe virtually together, maybe not a table, but and just got best practices. I think that you can expect that when you go to a game or an event in a large scale crowd in the next 12 to 18 months, you will be tested. You could be asked questions. You could be, you got to stay away from people. I don't know. I don't know if it's you take out one thing. We're working on a college basketball game at Sprint Center later this year. And we've talked about, do you sell tickets in groups of 2s and 4s and then spread those seating arrangements out? So you only have a capacity of 7,000 people in the venue. I don't know how to answer your question, but we're working on numerous scenarios.
It's probably not a fair question. It's like everybody asking me when is baseball coming back,
Right.
and I can make some guesses. Do you know, by the way?
I can't tell you. No, I wish I knew. I will
wish I
tell
did
you
too.
on opening day, I hung up my Royals 2015 championship banner. I wore my jersey and I texted Dayton Moore a picture of me in my home office, which is also my laundry room. And I said, this is breaking my heart. I'm in my jersey ready to go and I'm sitting at home. And he sent back a picture of him on his tractor saying, same thing. I wish I were there too. I thought, at least we have this commonality among us, amongst friends, of sports connects us, but our friendships is really what bonds us.
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing to see the connections that have been formed or strengthened or reaffirmed through all of this. I mean, for me, it's given me almost a green light to go reach back out to people that maybe I lost touch with. And so I think that there's been a lot of good in terms of that. Let's wrap it up with this. I think all the time, I'm using it in one of my presentations. I always do. That famous picture of the 800,000 people at the parade that, you orchestrated, and the moment that none of us will ever forget. I mean, just about everybody was there. So, you might remember the car being on the side of the road. You might remember whatever it is that you remember. I just remember doing 2 or 3 hours of live television with zero voice left and somehow having to figure out how to make that work. And it was just the most surreal day. But I think about that picture because we can't envision 800,000 people in one place. We're not even allowed to have more than 10 in one place at this point. But yet there was a spirit, and this is the reason why I always talk about this picture. I use it in a slide of my presentations, is because it is, to me, it represents the culture that Dayton Moore always said he wanted to build with the Royals, and not just the Royals, but within this whole city and within the region. We saw everyone coming together in a world where not everybody always gets along, rallying together over this baseball team. And I think about that now in terms of we have to social distance, but yet how amazing is this city that we're seeing everyone come together while not being able to be together. That's on my mind every single day, and I'm wondering what your perspective is on that.
Oh, absolutely. And just think, so we got to plan another parade in this, earlier this year. I mean, how crazy is that our city is in the heartbeat of the country. We know how to celebrate sports, how to participate in sports. We all can come together, and now we're just trying to figure it out like everyone else. But there's this passion here that we will get it figured out. That picture makes me think of a phrase Billie Jean King says all the time: pressure is a privilege. And so I look at that picture like you do and talk about, people coming together to celebrate. But I think of the pressure of planning that parade was such a privilege I will take with me for the rest of my life. The pressure right now of trying to figure this all out, being asked to help with the city, being asked to help on a national level, being asked to help locally, of how are we going to figure this out? That's a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. It's still such a privilege. And the pressure of being in that room with the Big 12 men's basketball championship and saying we're not going to play men's or women's, that pressure felt very heavy. But I look back and think what a privilege it was to have a voice to be able to make those decisions. So I have that picture up in my house, in my office at work, in my office at home. And I think of that often, that pressure was such a privilege, and things that we do now are such a privilege.
It's an unbelievable way to say it. And that gives me chills just to think about it too. I mean, I wonder, I'm sure that you'll never forget the look in those kids' eyes. Well, it was one that you had to look up, I know.
Yes, yeah. But, and they had tears coming down their cheeks, tears.
But in hindsight, I don't know, like what when you think of that image, what emotion does that evoke in you?
Well, as a mom, that emotion is you want to hug them and say it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think you have to get up every day knowing this is all going to be okay.
Yeah, it was the right decision. It was a hard decision, but it's one that you, and not sing
No, no,
single-handedly your
no,
decision,
no,
but
not at all.
you were in the middle of all of that. And I think you've described it so well, the weight of the shoulder. We all know what it's like to feel the weight of the shoulders. Many of us haven't felt the weight on our shoulders of $20 million economic impact. And oh, by the way, the tears coming down from guys that may one day be in the NBA or can do things that most of us can't do. So it was the right decision. I'm glad that you all did that. And I think that, I know you're not looking as a group, you're looking for credit, but it was something that made a major impact in a lot of lives. So I know that we will have many more celebrations. This is a good time to be in Kansas City. We've had 2 championships in 6 years. There might be another one next year. We got NFL draft coming up. The Royals are on the rise again, sporting, all of it. So not to mention how many events, like big picture, are you working on right now?
Well, we own, about a dozen, about 18 of our own events every year, from runs and camps and triathlons, and that's what sustains us financially. But otherwise, events that we're attracting, there are numerous. So NCAA championship bids have been submitted. We'll find out in October for future years. And then, of course, World Cup is on our radar for 2026. Working on a couple other private interesting projects with the NFL. And of course, always looking for Dayton's leadership with CU in the major leagues and Urban Youth Academy. So there's always something happening. Sometimes you just don't get to know about it until we can tell the details.
Yeah. More to come.
Yes.
And I know that Kathy and her staff never sit still, even in these times of somewhat stillness. Very busy, a lot to come. Kathy, this is great. I appreciate you doing it. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm glad we ended up waiting on it because I think it's more relevant now than ever. Thanks for everything you do and for your staff. I know that it is oftentimes behind the scenes, which is where you guys are comfortable, but it's very much appreciated. It's a lot of hours. Can't wait for all the next events to come. And whenever we have baseball and football and soccer and everything back, it's coming. It'll be there at some point. So
that's right.
This will just be one of those spots in history. So, well, Kathy, thanks for spending the time here today. And I'll see you somewhere sometime, probably virtually soon.
Sounds great. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, you got it. All right. That is Kathy Nelson from the Kansas City Sports Commission, president and CEO. She's amazing. She gets a lot of things done. I'm going to end it right there. There's not a whole lot more to say, just a lot to chew on and a lot of feel good there, a lot of reflection, and so proud to call Kansas City home. Have for 12 years and plan to for many, many more years to come. That's going to do it for the latest episode of Rounding the Bases Live. I want to thank Kansas City Cattle Company. You can check them out on their social media or their website. They'll deliver to all 50 states. And to my friends at Enterprise Bank and Trust, #no stopping you. Be back with another guest tomorrow. That's going to do it for Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Thanks, everyone.